Let's get more news, and glad to Sam McClure is at the MCG. He's ready. He's keen to watch the game tomorrow. He's a Carlton man. You're a bit earlier there, Sammy, but you've got a bit of mail about the fixture. What's going on?
Yeah, that's right. Good evening to you, Eddie, and to everyone. Well, I can tell you tonight that the first two rounds, no matter what, will go ahead as they are fixtured as long as we are playing games. The only time that the AFL will look to accelerate games, that is to cram more games into less days, would be from rounds 3 and 4. We could, in fact, see 4 weeks' worth of games put into rounds 3 and 4. That's if the AFL feels as though rounds 1 and 2 are going. The other thing I can tell you tonight is that there is concern, having spoken to multiple club CEOs and at AFL level, that government money may not be forthcoming for games that have been sold away from regular areas. That is games in Ballarat, games in Tasmania, games in the ACT. Now, they are sold there specifically so local governments can bring in crowds. With that now not happening, the questions are being raised. Will there be the money at a time, Eddie, as you guys have been discussing, that every cent for the AFL counts? Well,
that's why it takes so long to get these decisions, because every time you think you've got it nailed, something comes out of nowhere. Ross, can I ask you, just as far as the truncated season, bringing the season together, what is, particularly from a non-Victorian point of view, what are the issues?
Well, the travel's enormous, but there could be a win rather than over, back, over. They fly in and they stay for three weeks or 2 weeks and they play 4 games. So, yeah. I mean, the logistics...
And there's no reason why the Victorian clubs can't go to Perth, for example, and stay there for 10 days and play a 3 or 4 game series amongst maybe 2 teams go over, and you've got the West Australian teams over there, West Coast and Fremantle. They can play each other for 10 days.
And it's been done before. I was with Brisbane Bears and we played Fremantle and West Coast. We stayed over for those 2 weeks. So it has been done. And as drastic as this is, there's some excitement in the fixture and what's possible. I think we're going to get some new ideas out of this that will go forward in the longer term.
Just on Sam's point there, round 3 to 6 compacted, the depth of your list, it might be the deepest list that wins it this year. I look at Collingwood and Richmond, I think they go pretty deep, but I look at Geelong, with Dangerfield, so the reliance on their top end, lose 1 or 2 of them can really hurt. So that's another factor this year, Ross.
Well, as a coach, when and you got a young list and you're maturing, walking in last year, we were 6-3. And we had no injuries, and I thought, we lose 3 or 4 here, we're in a lot of trouble. Yeah. And those sort of lists and those coaches won't be sleeping too well with the situation that's arisen.
Sam, can you tell us anything about the final series and the possibility of a 10-game final series, as Craig Hutchison talked about the other night?
Certainly being discussed. Hutchie once again ahead of the times there, Caro, but it's something that we won't be able to know until we see and indeed prove how many games we're willing to play. It's something that you guys were talking about in the first segment. In fact, I can also tell you tonight that Channel 7 haven't even discussed the possibility of a refund until they know how many games they get to, because we may arrive at a situation, and Eddie broke it tonight, that we have games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. 7 may end up, in fact, with multiple primetime games. It's all going to affect the deal. The money, the finals, the amount of games is all up in the air, as we know.
Well, we've seen it with the women's football, Caroline. We've seen tonight the AFL have made a decision and changed what would have been the final series because it's going to work better in the circumstances.
So the young Collingwood footballers, we read tonight on Twitter, were sitting in their rooms as that news was delivered. They were in tears. They thought their season was over. What happened?
Well, I was running around doing my own business tonight as well, Caroline, but I did speak to Mark Anderson, our CEO, and that's exactly what happened. But the news is that it has changed now. There's going to be an announcement, I think it's been put out tonight, that it was premature tears. They were so pumped up to be able to get there, and now the great news is it is the top teams
top four teams
from both divisions, and they're going to play. So that's fantastic news. So while they lose 1 game, that's a perfect example of what Sam was saying there. While they lose 1 home and away game, they're actually going to get an extra final series with everything on the line. The idea of the top 10 has been pushed up. I can tell you that has been pushed up. All ideas are on the table at the moment, and that's what's going to be great about it. To your point, Ross, there's going to be so many different things. We could look at it completely differently. I mean, no one's ever thought that you could play in October, November before. Now you can.
And there'll be players sitting in the VFL and the Waffle thinking, I'm a chance here to be playing AFL football, and how exciting is that?
Who knows? Maybe down the track we might get to that 34-game season if you actually have a month off in the middle like they do in Scotland because of the wet weather.
And I reckon some will disagree with me on this panel, but Sam, the possibility of playing a grand final for the team that finishes on top this year. if the season drags on and the MCG is not available? Can we see that happening?
Well, it has to be a viable option, Lloydie, speaking to club bosses today. I mean, the whole fact that we don't have crowds in the grounds, as you can see, this is what it's going to look like at 7:30 tomorrow night behind me. That changes everything. And it changes travel, as you've been talking about. It changes the way that clubs prepare, the way that they're able to train. It's going to change everything. So I wouldn't rule out a club hosting a final, indeed a grand final, away from the MCG.
Ed?
I would think that by then, hopefully, we've got the crowds back in, particularly if it goes later in the season. And I think it'll be at the MCG because that's what the contract says. And if it's not, I think it'll be played at the ground that the AFL owns to be able to get as much money out of it as they possibly can.